All right, Tanner, welcome in. This is welcome everybody else. This is the bet, another episode. This is going to be a week one college picks recap. If you watched the week one picks video we did, we each made picks. We had our this is the bet, things like that. Tanner, so we're gonna go over week one. What are your thoughts on week one? We can go over some of the big games, big moments. What are your initial thoughts on week one and how it went?
Yeah, it's interesting. There were quite a few teams that um, had some shaky, as expected, from week one. But I think there were a lot of teams that came out and showed solid performances and gave us an idea of who to be watching for that could make deeper runs this year. And so, great week one. I have to say, there were a lot more watchable games than the blowouts. There
Yeah,
were a lot more than I expected for a week one. And some games like the Colorado TCU that yes, it had national attention before the game, but totally different national attention at the end of the game than what it was before. Before it was, oh, this is what can he do, and by the end it was, wow, look at what they did. So I thought that was really cool.
yeah. No, I definitely agree. There's two games that really stood out to me. It's actually two games on our list, which is cool. But one of them being Colorado TCU. Going into the game, a lot of hype, a lot of questions about who Colorado is. They won one game last year, but Coach Prime comes in, 57 players leave, 63. I think there's a bunch of new players that came in, and that game was just exciting from start to finish. Just watching Colorado come out with energy, go up early, and then kind of maintain it. And then that second half, just going back and forth, and Colorado finally getting the stop they needed. And then the other game being Texas Tech Wyoming, which we had on our list, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Texas Tech unable to cover, even unable to win in Laramie, Wyoming, and I was watching the BYU Sam Houston State at game time, so I didn't see the finish, but I watched the highlights on YouTube. I sent it over to you. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but
Yeah, I did.
just a crazy finish in Wyoming and double overtime games. So those are two games that stood out to me. Two Big 12 teams in those games, and kind of both on the wrong side of the result. So let's get into our picks and see how we did. You probably already know, but here's our picks from last time. Tanner, you were in the green, and then I was in the blue. So let's talk about you got the first one right. Rice covering against Texas. Did you get a chance to catch any of that game, or what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I actually didn't catch any of that one. A busy Saturday bouncing around. But as I would pop my head in for a little bit, just checking on ESPN, I was seeing kind of a slower start from Texas, which um, I personally, that was the reason I steered towards them not covering. Is I thought maybe this is a week one where they don't start it as hot, and that's what happened. It was kind of a slower game. I believe it was only 7 points first half, 9 points second half, and so 9 points in the second quarter, and then they
Mm-hmm.
slowly got their footwork and kind of got it together. So um, I don't think it puts a negative look on Texas. I think it's still a team that can go into Alabama. Alabama is favored by 7. We'll see if that line adjusts for what the odds makers saw in Texas. But I still think it's a team that can compete with Alabama. Um, for how long, I'm not sure. I still put a lot of weight on Alabama, but that's a little further down the road. We'll talk about that. But
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that one later on in another episode. But looking here, I'm just pulling up the box score, and I watched most of this game. That first half was a snoozer, just super boring. It's 16-3 at the half, and Texas kind of just not doing much in the first half. Just nothing too exciting. I mean, the defense looked great. That defensive line they have in Texas is just powerful. Secondary's pretty good. So I actually was surprised. It's a really strong part of their team. I think they're going to have a few, top NFL prospects coming out of that defense. That defensive line, they're huge. They look like they were twice the size of the Rice, offensive line, and that's kind of I think why they won this game. It's similar to the BYU Sam Houston story where the defense kind of won it for them. I mean, they put up 37 points, but it was nothing exciting. Quinn Ewers looked pretty good. He went for 260 and 3 touchdowns. They pulled him out, I think, in the fourth quarter because they were up. So, yeah, Texas, it's going to be really next week that tells us who Texas is against Alabama. And we'll talk about that one, but that's going to be a good matchup. I think Alabama looked pretty good in week one, but playing an inferior opponent as well. So it's going to be. Here's what I think is it's going to come down to coaching in that game. And do you take Nick Saban or do you take his former assistant Steve Sarkisian? We know former coaches that have coached for Saban tend to struggle against him, but Kirby from Georgia kind of has changed that narrative a little bit. But yeah, we'll talk about that one later. But moving on to the next game, which was West Virginia, Penn State. So that was an interesting game. A little bit tight at first, but we both had Penn State covering, and that was my this is the bet of the week. And Penn State did cover at the very last minute. Did you? What are your impressions from that game, Tanner?
Yeah, so I liked what I saw from Drew Aller. I think it was a better West Virginia team, given they only scored the 2 touchdowns. But I think it's a West Virginia team that won't finish last, from what I've seen from other Big 12. It'll be tough, but I mean, they rushed for 146, 162 on passing. Their defense did give up the 478 total yards, 332 coming from the passing. And so we'll see what develops for them. But to stay in it for a little bit in week one, showed a little bit of grit against the Penn State. May I remind you, playing in front of a whiteout crowd in Penn State, which isn't an easy feat on a national televised game. And so I think it's showing up. They weren't. I wouldn't say they got massacred. So
no, and the score doesn't really reflect how the game went. I think West Virginia showed a lot of grit. I think that's the right word. Especially their quarterback Garrett Green. He would put his body on the line multiple times. He had 15 carries for 71 yards. I mean, throwing wise, okay performance, 16 for 27, 162 yards. Not the greatest QB rating if you look there, if you care about that, but he had a lot of grit. I think he was kind of showed to be the leader of that team, and to me, he showed a lot that he cared throughout that game, just putting his body on the line, trying to get those extra yards for his team, even running a touchdown in, 2-point conversions, things like that. They showed a lot of grit, but it just wasn't enough to overcome Penn State at home. But I can see West Virginia being that team that can beat some of these Big 12 teams like BYU. That's not a easy win for BYU, especially going into Morgantown and playing them at home. So I think there's potential there for West Virginia, but against a top 10 team, Penn State, it's hard to say, if Penn State's really good. Also, they scored with 6 seconds left, a touchdown. So really this score is more like 15-31. Lucky for us, we covered because of the last-minute touchdown. They won by 23. So, yeah, Penn State looks good. Drew Aller looks great. I think he'll be a great quarterback for them. And, yeah, we'll see more from West Virginia, but not a terrible performance. I said they were going to get embarrassed, and I don't think it was quite that level.
No, definitely. Held their own.
So, yeah. So moving on to the other, one of the exciting games, just going in order, Texas Tech, Wyoming. That game going into second overtime where you have to go for 2. I'll give my first thoughts. We both didn't cover this. We thought Texas Tech was kind of one of those top 3 teams in the Big 12. That still can happen because the conference record's kind of what indicates that as far as our standings go, but Texas Tech offense came out looking great. They went up 17-0. Then kind of just lost all momentum. Wyoming defense played physical. I think wore them out a little bit. They get to take a lead 20-17. Texas Tech kicks in a last-minute field goal, and then we saw that overtime sequence. What were your thoughts on Texas Tech and Wyoming?
Yeah, so I wish I could have watched more of this game. This is one of those week one thrillers coming down to overtime. Uh, you got to give props to Wyoming. Their first couple events in their game is a punt, a fumble, and pretty quickly they see a 17-0 deficit, and then they rally. And so I put down how fitting Wyoming got the final touchdown. Uh, it's always great to see the rallying team score that final one and
Oh yeah.
and come out on top. So, as kind of diving into the Texas Tech we may see this year, I don't think it's a bad Texas Tech team. This is a
No,
Wyoming team that went 7-5.
one of those top Big 12 teams, top 5. I don't know if they're quite as high as we thought they would be, but they could prove us wrong. They could come out the following weeks and just play. I think there's a lot of good things from Texas Tech, but I think Wyoming just had the advantage. They got back into it, and then I think the home crowd kind of carried them the rest of the way. But
Yeah, I agree with
Texas
that.
Tech, Texas Tech is going to be good. I don't think this changes everything. I think it just is proof that they're not a top team, because a
Yeah,
top team wouldn't lose this game.
no.
Okay, moving on. UTSA Houston. So this line moved all the way down to UTSA being favored by 2.5. Did you catch any of this game? This game was on FS1 right before the BYU game. I don't know if you saw any of this. The ending. What are your thoughts?
I kind of watched somewhat of the middle. If I remember right, at one point I thought it was going to cover because towards the end, I believe UTSA took the lead. If you pull up
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick.
because I remember flicking it on, thinking, "Oh, they're going to cover," and this may have been the game with something down towards the end that was controversial.
Yeah.
Gave them a
No, so it was a fourth down conversion. Houston went for it on fourth, kind of to ice the game late in the fourth quarter, and they went and reviewed the play, and they marked the ball in a new spot, and that new spot was just barely a first down. And so there was some kind of upset coaches and players from the UTSA side. But this game was like kind of really defensive throughout. I mean, it's only a 17-14 win, but UTSA scored in the fourth quarter, and that kind of gave them some momentum, but they just couldn't quite pull it off. Houston moving on, a lot of new players, lost their starting quarterback, Clayton Tune. UTSA expected to win this game, but didn't. And they take on, I can't remember who. They're playing, UTSA plays somebody.
UTSA has a game against
Texas State, who beat
Texas
Baylor.
State.
That's what I was
I
looking
was
at.
going to say there was a name that sounded familiar that I'd seen.
So we'll see if Texas State's for real. But yeah, I mean, Houston didn't look bad. They won the game, and I think from my impressions is they might be slightly better than we thought they would. We have them finishing kind of at the bottom of the conference. But they're a team that can probably win a few of these Big 12 games. So any more thoughts on Houston San Antonio or this game?
No, just props to Houston for staying in it. Um, I'm really hoping. I believe they play Texas this year. Um, I'm really hoping they can do something against Texas because Texas bullied them to not join the Big 12. So I'd love to see them continue this momentum into the Big 12 and surprise a lot of people on where they finish. They're not going to be a top finishing team in the Big 12, but I'd like to see them pull some wins and finish a little higher than how people think they'll finish, and with somewhat of a respectable year. I'd like to see their schedule if you pull that up.
Yeah, Houston.
Yeah,
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick.
and get a look because I believe they do play. So they'll play
Yep.
TCU. Why not take a shot at TCU? I don't know if they've got the offense to hang with TCU.
They're playing Sam Houston as well. So
and Texas Tech, West Virginia, Texas. So we'll see. They'll be tested. This is probably why they're predicted a little lower.
yeah, tough schedule.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe
So,
Baylor's not as good as we thought, so maybe that's not as hard.
yeah.
But they play Rice next week, who played Texas this
Texas.
previous week. So maybe that will be some kind of like benchmark. If
Yeah. And then watch them lose to Rice, and then
yeah,
put my foot in my mouth about it being a better Houston team.
no, but I think they could win. They could beat Rice. That's 2 wins. They'll beat Sam Houston. That's 3 wins. They can beat West Virginia. That's 4 wins, and so maybe 5 wins here, maybe 6. But I don't think that's bad. So
No.
look at that, first in the Big 12. I think BYU is too. Now, okay, so moving on to probably my favorite game of the week, which is Colorado TCU. We both had TCU covering. We said it was all hype. We weren't believers, as Coach Prime would say. He'd say, "Do you believe now?" And so, Tanner, do you believe now?
Yeah, so he actually came on in the press conference. Maybe you missed it. He said, "This is the bet." Doubted us as well. I kept that receipt, and so
I heard him. Yeah, he mentioned
yeah,
us, which I was surprised. We have 13 subscribers, I think, but he must be
yeah.
one of them.
But in all seriousness, that's how it felt in this game. He had everything to prove against everyone, because even down to little people like you and me, we doubted. I've seen it so many times on ESPN, right? You see the game, they're trying to hype up a game. They'll throw up Purdue versus Ohio State, and they're trying to get viewers, and it's always the same narrative. The one team comes out, blows them out. That narrative is quickly swept under the rug. This was
Mm-hmm.
different. This was a team that seemed very, very well coached, that came to play. That if they can be coached to this level every game, could be a special team to do special things. And how great to see him. It's always great to see someone doubted and rise. So,
Oh
people will
yeah,
doubt you until you make it. But then, unfortunately, if he continues the success, we've seen it before. When you're at the top, people love to see you fall. They'll rally you,
yeah,
but they'll love to see you fall. So
yeah.
they'll have a target on their back for sure. So
Oh yeah, everybody's going to be the one that wants to knock off Colorado. Colorado, they talk. Coach Prime, he talks, and that can put a target on your back. I had this. We'll maybe do a overreaction video, week 1 overreactions. But what would you think, Tanner? So I just thought of this. If we're believers, you bet Colorado money line every game for the rest of the season. Do you think you'd be in the positive at the end of the season or in the negative?
I know they play some big teams. They play Utah. They
Yeah,
play
so
USC.
Utah's at the end of the year. I'll pull it up here. Nebraska on this Saturday. I think they can win that. I don't think Nebraska's that great. Colorado State, that's a win. Okay, Oregon, this one, that could be a good game
Yeah. Oh yeah. Is it at
at
Oregon?
or at
See
Oregon,
that one.
and then
That
USC.
one's so
These two
tough
games.
because you don't just walk into Oregon and win. I don't care how good you are. There's teams that do it, yes, but it's no cakewalk. I just
So
I I
they're
never say
also
it, I believe
plus.
it, but
Listen to this, plus 3,000 for Colorado to win the Pac-12. That's what I looked at today. It started at plus 10,000. It's at plus 3,000 now.
wow. No. In my personal opinion, and this will probably come back to bite me, and I'd love it too. I would actually love this too. A lot of is being thrown at them for that Big 12 win, right? To win the Big 12, and so the odds going down. Like we said, there is a big target on Colorado's back. You know that the Oregon players would love nothing more than when Colorado comes to shut them down and to be just dancing on the sidelines. So I
Oh
don't
yeah.
see it. I don't see it because when you get this much hype so
See,
quickly.
you got PTSD problems with Oregon though, going into
I
their
do.
hypes.
I do.
You
I
know it
do.
firsthand.
Yes, I do. But I see them winning more games than expected. but I don't. But TCU was a big game. Let's not get that wrong. People are talking down TCU. Yes, they were not the national championship team we
Yeah,
saw. Their defense was still horrible as it was last year, but they still were scoring points at will. Right? This is a team that came out swinging, and Colorado pulled up the win. I I don't I don't like jumping into it so quick when there's
yeah.
so much football to be played, right? You can see seasons go south after stuff like this. So I don't know.
Maybe we'll do a schedule prediction with them, but I think, Nebraska, Colorado State, that's a win. Oregon, ooh, that's tough. USC, but at home, still tough. I mean, that's a talented team. Arizona State, okay, yeah, that's probably a win now. Stanford, that could be a win. UCLA could be a win.
When
Washington State, so they could get bowl eligible for sure. Which I think,
and I
if you
would
would have
be
said that at
willing,
the start of the season, then that's their goal. I think.
and that one I'd be willing to throw more money than I'd throw money at a bowl game for sure. That's
Yeah,
something I see easy in the cards for Colorado.
yeah, definitely. But there's some tough games. I mean, yeah, Oregon and USC back to back, going to be tough. But just going, I mean, Shador Sanders showed out 510 yards, put himself on the Heisman list early. That's Deion's son, but he was thrown all over. Then we got Travis Hunter, 119 yards, 11 receptions, played both sides of the
Go both ways,
ball.
baby.
He's on the Heisman list as well, so a lot of hype around Colorado. Next week, if they come out, they should be able. If they're a top team, if they're more than just hype, they'll beat Nebraska by quite a bit, I think. And I
Yeah,
should see if there's a spread on that already.
yeah, that'd be interesting to see.
I haven't seen. Okay, Colorado favored by 3.5 here.
That's it. I don't know if
Oh
line.
yeah, I want to take that so bad right now.
I'd love to see. I don't think any of the books have it up. It's similar to what
And
you
it's
thought.
it's at home, first home game for Coach Prime. You gotta take that, I think.
Oh, after what we just saw, it's a no brainer. As we've joked before, book it. You know.
Yeah, book it. So now
If you can
that's the
actually
Colorado
get
TCU
that one.
game.
Yeah,
TCU, we'll see how they shape up. I think their offense was great. That's maybe Colorado's defense is terrible. I don't know, but they can move the ball at least, and then maybe the defense just isn't great, and we'll see where TCU's at. But I think they're still going to be a bowl eligible team. They're going to win games in the Big 12. I think people are overreacting a little bit, saying, "Oh man, TCU's not good. They're trash now, overrated." But it's easy to say that. Let's say that about Baylor more than TCU, I think.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our last pick, which I'm not looking good. I'm 1 in 5, but luckily my this is the bet is worth double, so
Yeah.
2 points for me. And then you had Sam Houston covering, which was actually a good pick for you. We
Yes.
we actually did a halftime show for this game, so go check that out. Um, but then we also did a post game. So what do you think about that game?
That one, as a BYU fan, well, BYU fans are so quick, and I did it too. I did it too. So quick to just negative, right? Debbie Downers. Oh, we're going to lose to SUU. This is, what did we expect from BYU? They switched. Their defense is great. Their offense is terrible. The defense was great. Jay Hill, that was my biggest question mark. And I can put a check mark next to that as BYU, at least in this game. We'll see later down the schedule with some tougher teams. The defense showed up. Felt like they were there to play. Great. The offense, I mean, I liked the punter. I liked seeing him punt because he punted a lot.
Yeah,
I
just a
wanted to
few
see more
times.
from Slovis. I said it to you at halftime. Usually with this BYU team, we see two plays that go just ridiculously deep, right? Receiver gets it. Crowd loses their minds. I didn't see it. We looked at the statistic, and I don't think there was a pass over one of a receiver had a pass over 15 yards or something. There wasn't that breakout play that you're almost guaranteed with BYU to see that deep ball connect. And Slovis didn't connect one of those. He went for it a couple times, but Sam Houston played him tight. There was very little separation. So we'll see if this is a week one. Slovis is a little nervous. I don't know. But the foundation felt a little shaky.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a lot of those similar overreactions saying we better watch out for SUU. And I see why, just because the Arizona State game they played was really close and we didn't look too impressive. I saw this poll on Twitter going around where it's like, would you say it's a win? A win is a win. Would you say you'd rather have the score been 35-21, just like meaning the offense was better but the defense wasn't as good? Do you prefer just the way it was, or I mean, do you prefer a shutout? So where were you at? Would you have liked to see it be a higher scoring game but the defense wasn't as good, or are you okay just taking the win and saying defense is good?
I'm okay taking the win after last year's defense. It was very frustrating to see a touchdown last year followed 4 plays later by a touchdown for the other team. Nothing more frustrating than seeing your 7 points wiped off by another 7 points. People don't like to cheer for defensive games, right? We love to see that offense because that's where college football is moving towards. We're seeing more offensive run teams than the defense grind that we used to see where games were finishing 3-0, right?
Yeah,
So this defensive stand by BYU, at least in this game against the Sam Houston offense, I feel is a win. And I need to be more grateful, count my blessings, that the defense will be able to show up, hopefully, like they did, because the defense, as I always say, wins championships, right? But the defense keeps you in games and allows you that opportunity to get a stop, score 7, where an offense can get 7, but can quickly see another 7 on the board the other way. Where a defense gets you the stop, then there's a 7, and then there's not that followed 7. So it's a win for me.
yeah, I agree with you. I think getting a win week one, you win. It's a shutout. Defense looks good. Offense maybe doesn't look as good. I think it's fine. But if people were bringing up, it feels like 2017. And that game was against Portland State. I was there. It was like a week 0 game is what they call it. Super hot in the sun. They won 20-6. Kind of looked flat. Kind of like this game where like didn't allow that many points, but at the same time, offense kind of. And that season, I think they won 3 games. Just like a rough year. Do you see it going that direction, that
And
south?
no, I don't. Kalani said it that year. The team wasn't very good, but then we were just riddled with injuries. I believe that's the year we saw it go from Tanner Mangum to Bo Hodge
Mm.
to Ben Critchlow, all the way to Coy Detmer,
Oh,
who
that was real.
I couldn't have told you he was on the team. And that poor soul comes in against the Utah State team, and
Yeah.
I mean, you as a fourth string quarterback, you can never prepare to enter a college game. It should never happen. So I don't believe this is 2017 unless we see some injuries. This is going to be maybe not the year some BYU fans anticipated, and does give worry because the Big 12 can score points. TCU scoring points. When we played Baylor last year, scoring points. If we have to rely on the defense, there's going to be a lot of games we sweat out. But
Yeah.
look, the nice thing is here's your defense, and your offense is down here, and there's just room to climb if your defense can keep you in games. So that's my 2 cents.
No, yeah. That season I think was like a lost year. I think me and you have had pretty level-headed expectations for what this season is going to be, and I don't think week one changed it, but I think for a lot of fans it did, where they're like, "Oh man, it's really gonna be a struggle." But I think they're kind of going a little bit too far to the other end, whereas we just kind of like this doesn't change that much on our opinions of the season how it's gonna go, but it's nice knowing the defense is good and it's nice knowing the offense has room to grow. So that's good. And then maybe we'll do a video on this sometime, but question of like, is Keaton Slovis a problem? Is this going to be the Keaton Slovis from Pitt, who had 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, or is this going to be the Keaton Slovis from USC, who would bomb it down the field and throw for 300, 400 yards, 3, 4 touchdowns a game? Is it going to be that Slovis? And I mean, that could be accounted to the system he was playing in Graham Harrell's kind of air raid system where they just throw the ball a ton. And BYU's offense is a little different from that. But maybe we'll do a video. Maybe that's an overreaction. Is Keaton Slovis is not good? That might be an overreaction. But I saw a lot of those comments like going around Twitter and Facebook, just like, "Oh, Keaton Slovis, yeah, he's not the guy." Like
Yeah,
just writing him off already.
which is terrible because you hate a fan base that would do that, but that's fortunately can be. And maybe I just need to stay off Twitter. Twitter can be very
Yeah,
divisive sometimes, and maybe I'm just seeing the bad side of BYU fans. But because my father-in-law is one of those BYU fans that they could lose every game and he'd say, "These are the Cougars I love, and we'll get them next year." Very optimistic, and so
yeah,
I think maybe we need to get back to that, show a little more support. But
yeah. I think it's always a balance, but I did see a lot of overreactions, and we'll see what happens. I mean, why be negative until there's a loss? I think once
yeah,
you lose, then it's like, okay, why did we lose? And if it's especially if it's a game we shouldn't lose, like next week against SUU.
yeah,
And I'm sure me and you we're gonna do a SUU BYU preview, right?
yeah, we will.
So we'll dive deeper into that one. And then you did that Baylor Utah preview, so you guys should go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But it seems like that spread could easily move that Baylor Utah one, and you're kind of on it early. So,
Yeah.
any other thoughts on week one? It looks like just kind of recapping. Let's see, I had two. I had only one right, but it was my this is the best. So that's 2 points, and then
That's week two. I think I went
you had
three
three.
and three and three,
Yeah,
but I
you
would have
did. You
lost.
killed it.
I lost the money to the juice, to the to Vegas, drinking my juice.
Yep.
So you can't just go even. You got to finish in the positive. But
Yep. But hey, it's a start. We'll see how next week goes. We'll maybe have a few picks, and yeah, go ahead and subscribe if you enjoy this stuff. We're just trying to kind of give our thoughts and bring some stats into it, bring some opinion into it, and if you like this kind of thing, we're going to be doing more BYU stuff, more probably Big 12 stuff, Utah stuff like that. So go ahead and subscribe. Any last thoughts, Tanner?
no, no, just excited for week two. What's better than week one is week two.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we'll see you guys all in the next one.